Imagine waking up one morning to a tidal wave of headlines declaring that electric cars are actually dirtier than hybrids, that the dream of a zero-emission future is nothing more than a well-crafted illusion, and that the much-hyped electric revolution is little more than a costly environmental misstep. It sounds dramatic, almost like a plot twist in a dystopian novel. But over the past year, this narrative has swept across social media, infiltrated newsrooms, and fueled countless debates at dinner tables around the world. Suddenly, what once seemed like a clear path to a cleaner, greener future has become a battleground of confusion, outrage, and even a dose of schadenfreude among die-hard combustion engine fans. Why has the world become so divided and uncertain about electric vehicles? And could it be true? Are hybrids actually the cleaner, more responsible option after all? Adding fuel to the fire, many skeptics noted that a large share of the world's electricity still comes from fossil fuels, especially coal and natural gas. The question was simple, but powerful. How green can an electric car really be if it's being charged with dirty energy? This argument has been echoed by industry figures like Akio Toyoda, the president of Toyota, who argued that in regions heavily reliant on thermal power plants, a surge in electric vehicles could actually increase overall emissions, a claim that quickly went viral and gave ammunition to EV critics around the world. But reality, as so often happens, is more nuanced than the headlines suggest. Over the past several years, a wave of research has sought to cut through the noise and answer the big question. Are electric cars truly greener than hybrids and gasoline-powered vehicles when you consider their entire life cycle? Studies published in respected scientific journals, such as IOP Science, have found that the production of a typical gasoline or hybrid car results in between 6 and 9 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. In contrast, a comparable electric vehicle leaves the factory with a carbon footprint of anywhere from 11 to 14 metric tons, mostly due to the battery. At first glance, this seems like a damning statistic. But here's where the story turns. Unlike internal combustion vehicles, electric cars start paying off their carbon debt the moment they hit the road. Thanks to the remarkable efficiency of electric motors, often 2 or even 3 times more efficient than gasoline engines, EVs quickly begin to make up for their higher manufacturing emissions. And as electric grids around the world gradually shift toward renewables like wind, solar, and hydroelectric power, the emissions from driving an EV drop even further. Recent studies underscore this point. Even in regions where coal and natural gas still dominate the energy mix, most EVs reach a break-even point with hybrids after about 2.5 years of driving, and with gasoline cars in less than 1.5 years. In practical terms, this means that after just a few years on the road, an electric vehicle overtakes its competition to become the cleaner option, often for the remainder of its lifespan, which can easily stretch to 10 or even 15 years. In nearly 3,000 counties across the United States, EVs are already the lowest emitting choice over their life cycle, a fact highlighted by Inger Anderson, the executive director of the United Nations Environment Program. She emphasizes, responsible mining practices are essential, but the data shows EVs generally outperform fossil-fueled cars in life cycle emissions. Meanwhile, automakers and technology companies are racing to make electric vehicles cleaner and more affordable than ever before. In June of the year 2025, Volkswagen announced a landmark partnership to secure sustainable battery materials and dramatically cut water usage in lithium extraction, a major concern in regions facing water scarcity. Tesla, the world's most prominent electric car manufacturer, has reported a 20% reduction in water usage per vehicle at its Nevada Gigafactory, setting new industry standards for efficiency. Ford, a century-old icon of American manufacturing, has committed $3.5 billion to building a massive new plant for lithium iron phosphate batteries in Michigan. These batteries are not only cheaper, but also avoid controversial materials like cobalt, which is often linked to unethical mining practices. Industry leaders are not alone in this push. Governments and international organizations are stepping up as well. The European Commission now requires automakers to declare the carbon footprint of every battery used in electric vehicles, holding the industry accountable and encouraging cleaner production. The United States has passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which provides generous incentives for companies to manufacture batteries and vehicles domestically, provided they meet strict environmental standards. On a global scale, the International Energy Agency projects that electric vehicle sales will jump by nearly 1/3 this year alone, driven by falling battery prices, aggressive climate policies, and a rapidly growing network of charging infrastructure. Despite these advances, the public conversation about electric vehicles remains clouded by a relentless storm of misinformation. Social media platforms are filled with viral posts claiming that EVs are more polluting than hybrids or even diesel cars, especially in countries where the power grid is still dominated by fossil fuels. High-profile industry voices like Akio Toyoda have been quoted out of context, their nuanced arguments turned into simplistic sound bites that feed skepticism and doubt. In some cases, government agencies have even chosen to withhold studies showing the benefits of EVs, fearing backlash from political leaders or segments of the public resistant to change. This confusion is not harmless. Misinformation shapes public opinion, influences elections, and can stall urgently needed reforms. If the myth of the dirty EV gains traction, it could lead policymakers to hesitate, slow down the rollout of charging infrastructure, or delay critical investments in clean technology. The stakes are enormous. According to experts at the United Nations and the International Energy Agency, accelerating the global transition to electric mobility is one of the most effective ways to combat climate change, reduce air pollution, and create healthier cities. So, why does the myth of the dirty electric vehicle persist, even as the scientific consensus grows stronger every year? The answer lies in a tangled web of interests: political actors who see climate action as a threat to their power, industries fighting to defend market share, and a media landscape that rewards controversy and sensationalism over careful analysis. Sometimes the loudest voices are the least informed. Sometimes the most compelling stories are the least accurate. But peel back the rhetoric, and the numbers tell a clear story. In California, which has led the way in EV adoption, smog-forming emissions have dropped by an astonishing 65% since the year 2010, thanks in large part to the rise of electric vehicles and the state's aggressive push for renewables. The California Air Resources Board's latest data, released in June of 2025, leaves little doubt. When it comes to cutting pollution, EVs are already delivering results on a massive scale. Globally, the International Energy Agency expects that more than 1 in 5 new cars sold this year will be electric. That's a seismic shift from just a decade ago, when electric vehicles made up a tiny fraction of the market. Battery prices have plummeted, falling by more than 80% since the early 2000s, and new technologies like solid-state batteries promise even greater leaps in range, safety, and sustainability. According to Bloomberg NEF, battery recycling could meet as much as 1/8 of global lithium demand by the end of this decade, reducing the need for new mining and closing the loop on valuable resources. Meanwhile, the environmental footprint of battery production is shrinking. New plants are increasingly powered by renewable energy, and companies are investing in advanced recycling technologies that can recover up to 95% of critical materials from used batteries. The European Union's new regulations, which took effect in June 2025, require manufacturers to track and report the full environmental impact of every battery they produce, pushing the industry toward greater transparency and accountability. But what about the countries and regions where coal still dominates the grid? Is it really possible for electric vehicles to be cleaner than hybrids or gasoline cars in these places? The answer, according to a recent study from Transport and Environment, is a resounding yes. Even in the most coal-dependent parts of Europe, electric vehicles already emit less carbon dioxide over their lifetime than the cleanest petrol cars. And as grids continue to decarbonize, the gap will only widen. An MIT study published in June 2025 found that charging electric vehicles with off-peak renewable energy results in life cycle emissions that are 80% lower than those of comparable gasoline models. Of course, the story doesn't end with emissions. Ethical sourcing of battery materials remains a critical challenge, particularly in countries where mining operations have been linked to human rights abuses and environmental degradation. Leading experts like Dr. Jane Goodall and Inger Anderson stress that the quest for a cleaner transportation future must not come at the expense of vulnerable communities or fragile ecosystems. Fortunately, industry leaders are embracing this challenge, investing in supply chain transparency, supporting responsible mining initiatives, and working to eliminate conflict minerals from their products entirely. Looking ahead, the future of electric mobility is brimming with promise, and with challenges still to be overcome. New battery chemistries such as solid-state and lithium iron phosphate are reducing the need for scarce and controversial materials while offering longer lifespan and improved safety. Vehicle-to-grid technology, already being piloted in several countries, could allow millions of EVs to store surplus renewable electricity and feed it back into the grid during peak demand, reducing the need for polluting power plants and making the entire energy system more resilient. Smaller, lighter electric vehicles are gaining popularity, as consumers and regulators alike recognize that oversized SUVs and trucks come with a heavy environmental cost, regardless of the powertrain. The Shift Project's recent study highlights that by prioritizing compact, efficient models, society can dramatically reduce resource consumption, lower emissions, and make clean transportation accessible to more people. The transition to electric vehicles also brings opportunities for economic growth and job creation. The rapid expansion of battery manufacturing, charging infrastructure, and new energy services is fueling investment and innovation around the world. The World Economic Forum stresses the importance of public-private partnerships to accelerate the deployment of charging stations and grid upgrades, ensuring that no community is left behind in the clean mobility revolution. But none of this is guaranteed. The future of clean transportation hangs in the balance, not because the technology isn't ready, but because public trust and political will remain fragile. If misinformation and doubt stall progress, the consequences could be dire. Continued reliance on fossil fuels, worsening air pollution, missed economic opportunities, and a dangerous delay in the fight against climate change. So, what does all this mean for you, the consumer, the voter, the citizen? First, it pays to look beyond the clickbait headlines. When you hear someone claim that electric vehicles are worse for the planet, ask for the full story. What about lifetime emissions? How is the electricity generated? What are the manufacturer's commitments to responsible sourcing and recycling? The overwhelming majority of independent studies conclude that once an electric car hits the road, it begins to erase its manufacturing footprint, breaking even within just a couple of years, even in places where coal is still king. Second, recognize that your choices matter, both as a consumer and as a member of society. If you're not ready for a fully electric vehicle, hybrids and plug-in hybrids still offer a meaningful step toward lower emissions. Traditional hybrids, which combine a gasoline engine with a small electric motor, can significantly reduce fuel consumption and tailpipe pollution. Plug-in hybrids, if regularly charged, allow for zero-emission driving on most daily commutes while still providing the range and flexibility of a gasoline engine for longer trips. But if you are considering an electric vehicle, know that the technology is evolving at breakneck speed. Batteries are getting cleaner and more affordable, recycling efforts are ramping up, and new features like vehicle-to-grid connectivity could soon let your car power your home during a blackout. Even your charging habits can make a difference. Plugging in during off-peak hours, especially when renewable energy is plentiful, can cut emissions by up to 4/5 compared to gasoline cars. There are also practical actions you can take to move the needle. Support policies that encourage clean energy and responsible manufacturing. Ask automakers about their battery sourcing and recycling programs. Educate yourself, share credible information with friends and family, and push back against misinformation when you see it. The battle for a cleaner future is fought not just in laboratories and boardrooms, but in conversations and communities everywhere. So why, despite the avalanche of evidence, does the dirty EV myth survive? The answer is as complex as it is frustrating. Political inertia, vested interests, and a media ecosystem that thrives on controversy all play a role. In many cases, the fossil fuel industry and its allies have a financial stake in slowing the transition, while some automakers are reluctant to abandon profitable legacy technologies. Meanwhile, social media algorithms amplify the loudest voices, often at the expense of facts and nuance. But here's the untold secret. Every year, the data tips further in favor of electric vehicles. With every new battery innovation, every additional wind or solar farm, every breakthrough in recycling or responsible mining, the case for clean mobility grows stronger. The obstacles we face now are not technical. They are social, political, and informational. The green transportation revolution is already underway. Whether it succeeds will depend on our willingness to challenge outdated assumptions, demand better from our leaders and companies, and stay curious and informed amid the noise. The next time you hear someone question the promise of electric vehicles, you'll know the facts, and you'll know exactly how much is at stake. Cleaner air, quieter streets, and a planet that can sustain future generations are all within reach if we choose to move forward together. If you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world, and share your thoughts below. Are you considering an electric vehicle, a hybrid, or do you remain skeptical?